I'm excited about what the Lord's doing. Hoping that you had a wonderful weekend yourself. And as we move forward, trying to get through the month of November and December, I hope that as we go through it, that we remember, let's be thankful for everything. And I would encourage you, start writing down something every day. My daughter, I love what she's doing. Every day this month, she's texting somebody who had some influence on her life to thank them for that influence that they have. I like that. And I think it's good that we remember those who have influenced us. Now, when you start getting my age, those that influenced you are already in heaven. But if they're not, then you ought to text somebody and say, thank you for all that you've done. And certainly it's a wonderful thing to do that. Well, today, let's talk about troubled waters and boisterous winds. In Matthew 14:29, the scripture says, and he said, come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. Now, there are two incidents in this occurrence that is not for those who are weak of heart spiritually. The first incident is that Jesus constrained his disciples to get into the boat to go to the other side. The second incident is when Jesus told Peter, he said, come. Now, in both incidents, watch this now, Jesus knew that there was going to be a storm on the way. And he knew that Peter would encounter boisterous winds, and yet he allowed his disciples to go through this storm and these winds. Now, modern day backsliders would ask, why did God allow his disciples to go through this if he loved them? You know, Jesus knew what he was doing. And he knew that he needed to teach his disciples some critical lessons before he could use them mightily once he ascended to heaven. Now, every believer needs to learn several lessons from this story before he uses them in a greater way. First, everything is not going to be easy when Jesus tells you to come. Just because Jesus says come does not mean you will not have trouble. When Jesus says come, sometimes you can be assured that you're going to face troubles. Does Jesus not care that he would send you through such troubles? Yes, he does. He does care. But he has no way of preparing us to be used greater without sending you through those troubled waters and the boisterous winds of life. Second, Jesus is always greater than the troubles you will face by obeying his command to come. So Jesus is greater than the troubled waters. He's greater than the boisterous winds of life. And Jesus knew that what he would do when he sent his disciples through this storm. And he had to let them go through these storms so they would know in years to come that he always is able to overcome any storm that they might face. God does the same for us. God allows us to go through those things. Why? So that we'll know down the road that God's still capable of overcoming these boisterous winds and the troubled seas. Third, you will never get to know the power of God without facing troubled waters and boisterous winds. Now, you don't get to know God's powers on the calm seas of life. You get to know his power in the troubled waters and the boisterous winds. You don't get to know God's powers in times of ease, but you get to know his power in the battles. You see, you don't get to know the power of God's grace without facing the heartache that God's grace is sufficient to help. Many want to know God's power, but God's power is not needed until you face things, get this now, that are greater than your abilities. The fact that Jesus tells you to come means that he wants to show you his power in your life. Fourth, God is preparing you for greater use through the troubled waters and boisterous winds. The greatest teacher in life is life. God has greater plans for your life than you realize, but he cannot trust you with those plans until he teaches you to trust him through the troubled waters and the boisterous winds. What we face today will be the catalyst of God's power for the future. God's power is not realized in our strength, but it's realized in our weaknesses. So God must send us through the troubled waters and the boisterous winds before he can give you that greater plan for your life. He needs to teach you that his power is great enough and that your faith is too small before he can use you in a greater way. Now, do you want God to use you? If you do, you're going to have to face some troubled waters, some boisterous winds before he can use you mightily. You can always be assured that if God constrains you to go and do something, he calls you to come, but he will always get you to go the other side of greater use. Despite any problems that you face, they're going to come, my friend. I've been at this for over 3 decades. I want to tell you right now, there's been a lot of troubled waters, a lot of boisterous winds that I've had to face, but God's always got me through. I've always told people this gray hair that I got, it's not a mistake. There's a lot of troubled waters with this gray hair. There's a lot of boisterous winds with this gray hair. But I want to tell you right now, can I tell you, God has always been faithful. And what God does through these times is he builds us, makes us stronger, makes us trust in him more because of these troubled waters. Oh, my friend, I want God to use me, but I understand this. I've got to go through troubles if he's going to use me. God's power comes on you when you're serving him and you're in problems greater than yourself. And God says, let me help you through. What a great way to know. Boy, thank God. God used me. My friend, this is why we have troubled waters and boisterous winds. Don't despair. God's just trying to show you his grace and his power in your life so he can use you mightily. Well, I hope this is a great help to you today. Now, let's remember today, be good to everyone. Everyone's having a tough time. Have a great day, my friend.